preseason special. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, John Lyons. Patriots kick off the 2025 preseason with, I guess you could say, John, a convincing 48-18 win over the Washington Commanders, a team, by the way, that they've played the second most in the preseason. But let's just jump right into this, John. Obviously, impressive win for the Patriots in Mike Vrabel's debut. I guess you could say it was a preseason game. Starters did start. A lot of the starters did start. Drake May, in particular, he played 2 series. A lot of the starters did play the first 2 series of the first quarter. Then the 2s, 3s, and eventually the 4s took the game over. But as always, John, before we get into the conversation here, just some initial impressions of what you saw tonight with the Patriots' 48-18 win over the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, well, first of all, John, what's this now? Officially our 3rd year doing these post-game shows together? Love doing them, by the way.
Fourth, I believe.
4th, right? Yeah, 2022.
Yeah, Belichick's last year was our first year.
Yeah, so was it 3rd, 4th year doing this? And
fourth, what a way! It's 4th. It's our 4th.
Yeah. What a way to start, right? I mean, that Travion Henderson kickoff return for a touchdown. And that's my biggest takeaway from this game, John. And look, you and I know this. We talk about the draft every year. You've been covering it for over 2 decades. You don't really know how good a draft class is for about 3 years. But one thing I will say is you look at this team tonight, and I would say, add in the joint practice a couple days ago, this team, especially the young players, is so much more athletic than it was a year ago. And it's not just Travion Henderson. It's Will Campbell and Jared Wilson blocking in space. And they weren't perfect tonight, but getting out in space and blocking. Kyle Williams getting open. Some of the young corners, including Alex Austin, playing really well in pass coverage. Like so many of these young players. And again, it remains to be seen what their ceiling is and how good the draft class is. But the just the pure athleticism really jumped out at me tonight.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, as you mentioned, Henderson kicks the game off with a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. That speed that we saw in college, we saw it at Ohio State, especially in the college football playoff last year, where whenever they needed a big play, it was Travion Henderson that made it for the Buckeyes on their run to a national championship. And look, let's not kid ourselves. The Patriots have lacked that big play element now for a while. All of a sudden, to your point about this rookie class, you insert Travion Henderson into this lineup. You draft a Kyle Williams, you're going to start to use him. You saw tonight, they threw a couple of fade balls to him right before the end of the half. But that return electrified the crowd. It got the crowd into it. Of course, you had a big crowd here tonight anyway, bigger than usual for a preseason game because you had the Tom Brady statue unveiling earlier in the evening. But yeah, make no mistake about it. Look, Travion Henderson is going to be a big part of this offense. And I don't think we're going to have to wait to see that. You saw it tonight. It's Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson. Antonio Gibson got the bulk of the work at the tail end of the second quarter and into the third quarter. So Henderson's going to play a big role on this team, both in the return game, but also as a guy that they're going to use out of the backfield, whether it be in the passing game, the screen game. They're going to motion him out, use him in the passing game. I think sometimes you're going to see them line him up outside in the slot or even split. He's going to be moved around, but you got a pretty good taste of the explosiveness of Travion Henderson tonight and how he truly really is a big play waiting to happen. Obviously, they got him some touches on offense. We didn't really see it on offense, but you didn't need to see much more, John. That return set the tone for what was a blowout win. And again, I know it's a preseason game, impressive win nonetheless.
Yeah, and you mentioned it that you didn't see a ton of Travion Henderson on offense, but when you did, I mean, he had 1 carry, but it was an 18-yard run, right? And they did throw him the ball 3 times, so it feels like they're going to find as many different ways to get him involved as possible. This is something you and I have talked about this quite a bit, and Brian Hoyer talked about it on the TV broadcast tonight about his pass protection ability and how that's going to get him on the field faster. Yep. And that's a big thing with McDaniels.
Level pass blocker.
Right. And I just think, again, that's one of those things. It's going to get him on the field more and more. We saw it tonight. He was the second running back tonight behind Stevenson. He's already passed Gibson, and I won't be surprised at some point this season if he passes Stevenson. It's just the natural talent is there. And that breakaway speed on the kickoff return, and then I would also say the Kyle Williams, I know it ended up being incomplete, and I know that should have been called a penalty, but his breakaway speed on that fade route, haven't really seen that for the Patriots in a while. And I know they've had some fast guys, right? Like the Tyquan Thornton's a fast guy, I know, right? but actual game day speed, been a while since you've seen the Patriots have a couple guys with that.
Turning to Drake May, he finished 3 of 5. He completed 3 of 5 passes. He had 2 rushes for 16 yards, including a 5-yard rushing touchdown. Some thoughts on Drake May's night. Of course, he also had the fumble to end that first possession. But what were your thoughts on Drake May's night?
Yeah, the fumble was frustrating because it's what we've talked about all off season, right? The
Yeah.
biggest thing with him is to cut down on the turnovers. And if you look at that play, Washington ran looked like a twist or stunt with their defensive linemen. And I think Will Campbell and Jared Wilson just didn't communicate it fast enough and pass it off. So that to me was an experience thing. Like 5 or 6 weeks from now or 8 weeks from now, I expect those two guys will be able to pass off a stunt like that. Okay. Right. But just tonight, I don't think they were quite there yet. That being said, okay, once it happens, it felt like that was an instance where May should have just taken the sack. Maybe try to throw it away quicker, but really just what's the word? You take the sack, you punt, okay, you can live with that. Instead, you get the fumble there. I thought the rest of the drive, he was okay. I mean, it was tough. That first receiver group with Diggs, there was not a ton of guys open for him to throw to. We saw him try to get to the tight ends, try to get to the backs. And I will say his touchdown run, that's kind of what I want from him when it comes to running the ball. And he had the run.
Couldn't agree with you more. I'm not a fan of the design stuff.
Yeah, and
I'd rather they give him some freedom to improvise.
Yeah, and maybe once in a while, if it's 3rd and 1 and you really got to have it and you do a design run with him, fine. But if you look at the couple runs he had in this game, one was to convert a 3rd down, and the other one was to run in for the touchdown when there was a wide open lane. Like, to me, that's what I want. Hey, he's in the pocket, no one's open, there's a wide open lane. Take it and walk in the end zone for a touchdown. So, on the whole, I thought he was solid. Maybe not as good as he was in the joint practice on Wednesday, but I thought he was solid overall.
Yeah, and you mentioned Will Campbell and Jared Wilson. Of course, you talked about Washington running those TE stunts. There was some confusion there on the pickup of the TE stunt that resulted in the sack fumble by Drake May. And look, at halftime, Mike Vrabel was asked by Channel 4 Steve Burton about it, and he basically put it on the quarterback. He didn't mince words. He said, we got to be better. Quarterback's got to be better. And I couldn't agree with him more. I mean, look, we've talked about it all offseason. It was the biggest issue he had as a rookie, taking care of the football. He has got to do a better job with it. He can't be freelancing, especially outside the pocket, dropping the ball down by his hip and exposing it. He's got to do a better job of protecting himself and protecting the ball. And look, if you're going to turn it over, get it out of your system now. But come the regular season, come September 7th when the Las Vegas Raiders come to town, you can't have that crap. That gave them a short field. And you know the value of field position in our game. You give the Las Vegas Raiders, who aren't exactly world beaters on offense, but Chip Kelly's a really good coach. He's going to manufacture offense for them. You give them a short field, they're going to make you pay on September 7th. So he's got to be better with the ball. As far as the rookie offensive linemen are concerned, yes, I noticed that as well with the mix up there with the TE stunt. The other thing I noticed is Campbell had a hard time getting off on a screen. He couldn't disengage to get downfield. All things you can fix, all things you can clean up. The thing that I did like, though, from Campbell is fundamentally I thought it was pretty good. His footwork was really good. I thought his handwork was really good. So there were a lot of positives there, even though there were some things there he needs to work on as well.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head because you go back to this offensive line last year and the year before, the guys just weren't good enough, right? Like, I mean, you could say all you want about, coaching and that they weren't good enough. This, you look at it and you say like that TE stunt, well, over time with experience, I think they're going to get that right. Like you saw the talent, you saw the athleticism, you saw Campbell and Wilson getting downfield run blocking too. That was fun to watch. But again, I feel like you can see the talent there with those guys. And by the way, Marcus Bryant, another rookie starting at right tackle. So they started 3 rookies on that offensive line.
And I'll tell you this much. I think
he did all right.
He did all right. And call me crazy. I thought I had him earmarked for the practice squad, but I do think he has a shot at making this team.
So on that point,
good camp.
This was my takeaway is in the joint practice on Wednesday, he was the starting right tackle. Today, he was the starting right tackle. But when they went with their second unit and they brought DeMontre Jacobs in, they moved Bryant to left tackle. So that kind of tells me they think he's their 3rd best tackle behind Campbell and Moses right now. For them to use him with the first and the second unit at both tackle positions, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it felt like to me that showed that at least they have more confidence in him than they do in a Jacobs or a Lowe or Yasir Duran, who's been in and out of here, whoever else you want to throw on that list. So again, remains to be seen how he develops. I mean, you talked about him at the draft time that he's a little too stiff and he's got to get, better bend. But it feels like he's had a pretty good camp and they were willing to trust him in a couple different situations tonight, which I think for him is a pretty good sign.
Yeah, and I also think it shows you that they're developing him as a potential swing tackle, guy that can play both spots. And that's why, given the camp he's had and cross-training him like that, I think he has a legitimate shot to potentially break camp on the 53-man roster. Because, again, I think when you look at it, with that size, that athleticism, if he can bend better, be a little bit more of a natural bender, be more athletic and more flexible, he's a guy that could end up being your third best tackle. And again, Vidarian Lowe, we haven't seen him. He's been hurt. So we don't necessarily want to rule him out. Obviously, Brian is younger, more athletic, more talented than a Trey Jacobs. So I think he would have the edge over him. Jack Conley profiles more as a guard, right tackle type. So I think he would have the edge over him. So Marcus Bryant has had a solid camp. He's obviously made a good impression on Doug Marrone and the offensive line coaches. And I think if he continues to do what he's doing, he's going to position himself to make this team out of camp and be that swing tackle. And look, let's not forget, he played a lot at Missouri. He came into the league with a lot of experience. He's not a young man that is talented but hasn't played a lot of football. Marcus Bryant has played a lot of football. You are watching Patriots Pulse. I'm your host, John Sirenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, John Lyons. Patriots whip up on the Washington Commanders with a 48-18 win in the first preseason game of the 2025 season. Next Saturday, they'll be at Minnesota before wrapping up the preseason the following Thursday at New York against the New York Giants. Second half of this game, it was really the Efton Chisholm show. He finished with 6 catches for 50 yards, had a 12-yard touchdown catch, also had a 20-yard reception on a smoke screen. Overall, he picked up where he's left off. I mean, he had a strong spring where he positioned himself to potentially make this team. And then he's had a pretty good training camp, and he parlayed all of that, John, into a pretty solid performance here tonight in the second half. Now, wide receiver is tricky with the Patriots for a couple of reasons. One, you got a lot of bodies there, and you got a lot of guys that have played in the league. But the other part of all of this is they may only carry 5 receivers. So there really isn't a lot of opportunity with the Patriots. But if you're Efton Chisholm, you've certainly positioned yourself to potentially, at the very least, end up on the practice squad. Or if you don't end up on the practice squad, he keeps doing what he did in the second half tonight, he could find himself getting that opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting position group because, I mean, the last couple of years, it's been a really bad position group, and it's better this year. And you look at like Diggs, Booty, and Douglas, to me, that's their top 3 receivers. You start the year in 11 personnel, those are your 3 starters, right, as long as Diggs is healthy. And then you look at a guy like Kyle Williams to me. Tonight, I sat there tonight thinking, they should find a way to get him some snaps with Drake May and just see how it fits. Because his releases at the line are just as good as advertised if you watched him tonight. And I know some of it was against backups. I get it. But that he was impressive tonight. Okay, so that's 4 guys. And he's going to make the team anyway. But that's 4 guys. Kendrick Bourne, I think, is a guy you want to have around, but he's been hurt. So I think that hurts his chances.
Pop Douglas is going to make the team.
And then, by the way, I haven't even mentioned Mac Hollins yet. So we're already talking 5 guys right there. Your top 3 plus Kyle Williams plus Mac Hollins. That's 5 right there.
So let me ask you this. You and I have talked about this, and I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. You have a little bit of a log jam at wide receiver. You have a little bit of a log jam at running back. Could you see them potentially trading one of those wide receivers as we go along here in the next week or two to create to break up that log jam and kind of create a clearer picture for themselves as to who they should keep?
I think the issue is I don't know what the value, because we're sitting here their most tradable receivers, I think, John, are Demario Douglas, Diggs, and Kyle Williams, and they're not going to trade any. What are one of those other Polk, Baker, Bourne, like, what are you getting for them? A conditional 7th-round pick at the most? You know what I mean? Like, so I
And
don't know if
not for nothing, Baker's had a pretty good camp. He's another
he
guy you
has.
got to put in the mix.
He has, and he's a guy that, I've had my doubts about. We've talked about it, but he has had a pretty good camp. We did see Polk get hurt tonight. Obviously, hopefully for him, it's nothing serious, but you wonder how sometimes these things work themselves out in a way. And there's still 2 more preseason games, a couple more weeks, if you want to call it a couple more weeks of camp, even though we're into preseason, the preseason portion of the calendar. So maybe some guys will start to separate themselves, and we'll see. And then do you keep 7 receivers and then keep fewer linebackers? Because I think we saw tonight, they started the game with 3 safeties. I think they're going to play a ton of nickel and a ton of 3 safety packages. And we saw it in the joint practice. So does that allow you to keep 1 fewer linebacker and 1 extra receiver? I don't know. Like, it's interesting because then you also have to factor in the special teams element, because you have Gibson and Henderson and Marcus Jones. Like, those are your 2 kick returners and your punt returners. But can a guy like Chisholm or Kyle Williams or someone also be a return man? Or Baker, we saw him play some special teams tonight as a gunner on the punt team. Like, does that, help him out in a way? It's an interesting, because you had the right word, right? It's a log jam. And I don't know that there's been 5 guys or 6 guys that have truly separated themselves yet.
No, I agree with you. And again, there's a lot of guys there. You mentioned Matt Collins. There's a lot of guys there that right now could be on the outside looking in. Like, you would think Matt Collins is going to make this football team. Don't think it's a given, despite the fact that he has a great TikTok account. Yeah. I'm not sure it's a given. And I kid, of course. But you're going to have to figure out a way to free up some space at the position. And the way to do that might be a trade. Now, you bring up a good point. How much trade value does a guy like Kendrick Bourne have? Because I would think he's probably your most valuable trade asset right now. Baker has no trade value. Jalen Polk, I think, might have some. It depends on what teams evaluated him and liked him and are willing to take a flyer on him. But right now, as we sit here having this conversation, I would think their best trade value receiver is Bourne. They may or may not make a move there. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind here, and you mentioned that the possibility of them carrying 7 receivers, what do you do at tight end? I thought for sure they would carry 3. The more I watch this team, John, I mean, again, if they carry 3, they're going to carry a guy that can play fullback. And Jack Westover has proven to be that guy so far. So they may only start the season carrying 2 tight ends, but now you got to figure out a way to get a guy on the field that can be that lead blocker when you want to get into the eye and when you want to start pounding people.
And another ripple effect of this, like, Anthony Jennings was playing the entire second half of this game, which is not a good sign for his roster.
Another guy that's a possible trade candidate.
Right. But that's the thing where if, you have, say, Keon White and Landry as your top 2 edge guys, and maybe that makes a guy like Jennings expendable, does that open up a receiver position or something, or an extra tackle? Like, that's just how these things kind of matriculate themselves. But I noticed that too. Jennings, a guy that's been a big part of their defense basically since late 2021, early 2022, he's been that guy setting the edge in the run game, and he's been really good at it. But playing deep into the 4th quarter tonight, which usually is not a good sign for a veteran trying to earn or continue to earn a roster spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the bottom line is he's not a scheme fit. He was a good scheme fit in Belichick's defense and in Covington's defense last year. He's not a scheme fit in this defense. He just doesn't rush the passer enough. Vrabel wants guys that can play in that tilt 5, that wide 5, get up the field, beat guys clean, and get to the quarterback. That's not Anthony Jennings' game. He's a guy that's going to play in a regular technique. He's a guy that can control gaps, get his hands on people, support the run, and he can give you a little bit of a pass rush as well. But in this scheme, it's more about resetting the line of scrimmage and being disruptive. It's not his game. It's not who he is. He doesn't fit this system. So he's another guy, when you talk about veteran guys that could be on the bubble in regards to making this team, he's another guy to keep an eye on. He's another veteran that could very well find himself playing somewhere else on September 7th, either via trade or possibly getting released. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy who was a 3rd-round pick, very popular in the locker room, popular in the community, not an easy guy to let go of. But if he's not a scheme fit, again, I think that what you may end up seeing here is a situation where they may end up shopping him. You are watching Patriots Pulse. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, WEI's John Lyons. We've got about a handful of minutes here left. If you want to join the conversation, come on over, jump on in. And we know you have plenty of great options out there, but we'd love to hear from you too as well. So feel free to join the conversation. John, thoughts on the Brady statue? I've seen mixed reviews. I was there for the ceremony. I think it looks pretty good, pretty lifelike. I thought that the sculptor did a good job. I know a lot of people are bitching and moaning online. Overall, solid statue. I thought the ceremony was great. Kudos to Mr. Kraft and the Patriots for doing a great job honoring the great Tom Brady with the bronze statue.
Yeah, and I liked at the bottom of it, it put all the Super Bowls he won here, like the Super Bowl and then the score of it. I thought that was a really cool touch. I think the statue overall is fine. My only criticism is I wish it had been a moment of him holding a Super Bowl trophy, right? Because that's what he's known for here, is changing the franchise, winning all those championships. And you could have picked any one. Super Bowl 36, 38, 51, 40. You could pick any of them and it would have been good. So I think, again, the statue to me is fine. I really like the nice touches on the bottom with the different Super Bowls and the scores. I just wish a Lombardi trophy would have been involved there. But again, it's a hell of a lot better than, the Dwayne Wade statue down in Miami. So it's better than that.
Yeah. Look, like I said, I thought it was a great night. I thought that the organization did a great job honoring Brady. They wanted to do this last year. It just didn't end up fitting with Brady's broadcasting schedule. Thought it was a little odd that they were doing it before a preseason game. But again, because of Brady's broadcasting schedule, unless he was covering a game in the area, in which case they would have had to do the ceremony on a Saturday, let's say. Ultimately, they just decided to do it tonight, get it out of the way, get the statue up. And again, I think to the sculptor, he did a great job. I like the different touches. You mentioned the 6 Super Bowls. You've got the Super Bowl logos on there, the score. Obviously, that also represents the 6 states in New England, even though Connecticut acts like they're a part of New York. But again, I thought it was well done. Nice touch. Timing, I thought, was a little interesting, but it's great to see Brady come back. Of course, he also spoke to Brian Hoyer during the game. I thought the fan reaction was interesting. The fan reaction was great at Patriots Plaza during the ceremony. I thought the fan reaction in the stadium when he was speaking to Hoyer during the game was a little odd. Like, this guy's the greatest player of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest winner in league history. And the fans were very, melancholy. They're like, hey, Brady, Brady. It makes me wonder, it's a preseason game, so people aren't as into it. So naturally, their reaction might be a little different. But it also makes me wonder, John, is there enough separation from Tom Brady's time here where, dare I say, he's kind of a thing of the past?
I wonder if it's a little – well, I will say this. When they interviewed him in the first quarter, it kind of just came out of nowhere. I thought it was going to go to commercial break and we're talking to Brady. So maybe people weren't – because it's the end of a quarter too. People
there were a lot of empty seats. People were obviously going to use the bathroom and
get food, right?
Refuel with their favorite beverage.
I wonder if that played a big role in it. And you mentioned the fact that it was a preseason game, and also the Patriots are right on the line right now of doing too much, if you know what I mean, because they had the thing against the Eagles in 2023 at halftime. They had the whole 4-hour Brady night last June. I was there, and it was incredible. I loved every minute of it. And now they have this, right? So I think that's that. In a weird way, it's like you don't want to spend all the time just celebrating the past. You want to be, and I think that's the thing. If you ask fans tonight their best memory of tonight, I bet you a lot of them would say Travion Henderson's kick return, because it gave it was exciting play, but it gives you hope for the future. Whereas when you were at Brady night last June, it was all about Brady and it was terrific. So I feel like maybe now they're right on that. If that had been Brady's first time ever being back at Gillette when Hoyer interviewed him, I think the place would have went nuts. But again, he's been here several times before. As you said, it's been several years now. So maybe that played into it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think he's also in an odd situation in a sense. He's in an odd spot because he's a broadcaster. He's also a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, who you're opening against. He's in a difficult spot here. He played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and won a Super Bowl there. I know that up here we try to pretend that didn't happen, but it did.
Yeah.
So he's in an odd spot in a lot of ways. But to his credit, and I think Brady has reached a certain level of flakedom in retirement where there's a little bit of a flaky aspect to him in some ways. I love him. Him and Larry Bird are my two favorite Boston sports athletes of all time. I will forever love Tom Brady and what he did for me as a Patriots fan and as someone covering the team. But all of that being said, I agree with you. I think this has to be
it's like right on the line.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if they do another thing, it'll be too much. You know what I mean? Like
right. You don't have a Ring of Honor, so you're not gonna.
Yeah.
You're not.
But like they're gonna retire his numbers. So like, are they gonna do another ceremony where they unveil a number 12? You know, up somewhere in the rafters? Like,
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. That's where, especially considering the team's been bad the last 2 years. Like if they were in the AFC Championship game last year, and then you bring Brady back on top of it, I think it's also a little bit of a different vibe too.
No, I agree with you, and I think that plays a part in it as well. And I think part of it too is now you're starting to wonder, all right, are they trying to capitalize on Brady to deflect for how bad the organization?
Yeah. And we've seen the Red Sox do this with David Ortiz, right? Yeah. We've seen the Celtics do this at times with some of their legends. So it's nothing like new. But again, I just think right now they're right at that line. So no more, because you have the great memories and the great ceremonies. But especially too, what are you going to have? 4 Brady ceremonies and nothing for Belichick? You know what I mean? Then it starts to get into
my next question. Does Belichick get a statue?
So if you notice, and of course you know this, you cover the team, you're there all the time, there's 2 spots of grass out in that area, and one of them has Brady's statue. There's another empty spot of grass still that would fit a Belichick statue very well. And of course, what's the Brady statue? Is it 17 feet tall? I think Bob Oh, I thought he said 17 in the thing, which I was like, but so they'll make Bills like 11 and a half feet, just to be petty about it. But I'm
not so sure he gives him the statue right now.
I think honestly, and I'm not trying to sound morbid when I say this, and you and I have kind of touched on this before, I don't think he gets a statue until after Robert Kraft is no longer running the team for one reason or another. Or honestly, it could be posthumous after Bill passes on. I really think, because it feels like the animosity between them, it's still there. Right. And I know he came back for Brady night and he got an awesome ovation. I was part of it, right? Clapping for him. And he came back for that. And I remember I was there and I thought, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he never comes back after this. And it just feels like that's kind of been the vibe around all of it. They're still taking petty shots at each other once in a while. So I don't know. I don't. And maybe the only thing is what in next year, UNC plays BC up at Boston College in 2026 or whatever. Maybe that weekend he comes up. They try to do something then, but otherwise, I don't know. I don't have a good feeling of him ever coming back to Gillette Stadium.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't
think to say it, but
I don't think it's going to be what you've seen with Brady. And again, Kraft and Brady's relationship is well documented. I mean, Kraft said it tonight. Other than the members of his family, the next person he loves the most is Tom Brady. So obviously, the two men have a special relationship, a special bond. It makes it easier. I agree with you. I think you probably want to pump the brakes on the Tom Brady celebrations now. You've honored him about as much as you can. You gave him a night where you packed your stadium with 65,000 people. You put him in your team Hall of Fame. You built a statue for the guy. What more can you do? Now, could they do something to honor him potentially once he gets into Canton? Maybe you might see them do something like that. But if you're Robert Kraft, you don't need to one-up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. Tom Brady will always be remembered as a Patriot. Again, he won a Super Bowl down there. He'll be remembered as a Buck as well. But big picture, when people look back on Tom Brady's career, they're going to remember all the great things he did here. All right, some final thoughts here, John, before we wrap this thing up.
Just one other player I think deserves mention, and we've talked about him a little bit at training camp, but frankly, I don't think we've talked about him enough. Jalen Hawkins started as one of the safeties tonight. I think he's been pretty good in camp. He played 600 snaps last year at free safety. I think a lot of people forget because the season was so bad, especially towards the end, but he played a lot last year, and I think he's gotten better. I think he's pretty athletic, so we'll see where it goes. I'm not sitting here telling you he's the second coming of Devin McCourty, but I think he's made a lot of progress. He started tonight. He looked pretty good, I thought, tonight at first glance. So he's a guy that, for next week's game against Minnesota and going forward, he's a guy that I have my eye on. I give him credit.
Yeah. No, I agree. And speaking of that, of course, the Patriots wrap up training camp here. They'll have practice. The final public practice will be on Sunday. They'll have another practice on Monday, which will be closed to the public. And then they'll head out to Minnesota to do joint practices with the Vikings. They play the Vikings on Saturday at 1, next Saturday at 1. So it's hard to believe, but I mean, we're pretty much at the end of training camp here now. It's crazy, but the summer flies by up here, and certainly the start of the football season flies by. So stay tuned as always with New England Football Journal. We'll have plenty of coverage for you of the Patriots, as well as college football. Of course, colleges in the area going through training camp, and the high school football season kicks off this week. We'll start having more content up regarding high school football as well. All right, John, thanks as always, my friend. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Looking forward to next Saturday already against Minnesota. Should be a nice little test. We'll see. I think Minnesota will play some starters in that game. We'll see if they get J.J. McCarthy. The Patriots defense gets to face him. So I think it'll be a nice test, a team that, honestly, John, could be a Super Bowl contender in Minnesota. So I think that'll be
a lot of nice pieces.
Yeah,
it'll be a good test for the Patriots. And, of course, now that you only play the 3 preseason games, your starters now will play the bulk of snaps that they're going to play this preseason in that second preseason game. So I suspect we could get Drake May for a half. I suspect that if not, we could get a lot of the starters for a half. So we'll see. Obviously, we'll see how the joint practices go as well. And as always, you can catch John on WEI, so make sure you're following him on X for updates as to when he is going to be appearing on WEI. All right, for John Lyons, I'm John Serenitas. Patriots with a 48-18 win over the Washington Commanders to kick off the 2025 preseason. Until next week, stay safe. Make sure you're following along, and we'll talk to you then. Peace.